everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We are going to review in-app best practices and ROI. Want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Sasha, and I am an enterprise customer success manager here at OneSignal, working with some of our larger accounts to help see value and set up in-app messaging. Today's agenda, we are going to first just do a very quick general overview of what in-app messaging is, then go over some of our in-app best practices and how to drive ROI. And we're going to save a few minutes at the end for any of your questions, but I recommend submitting them throughout the course of the webinar, and I'll see them all at the end, so as they come up. We're going to start with the messaging overview. So what are in-app messages? In-app messages are messages that are going to be shown during an app session within the app UI. So the difference is with a push notification, you can send messages to someone's screen outside of having an app session, but in-app messages, you do need to be inside of that specific app, have that app actively loaded. But the good news is you don't need to have a push token or any kind of customer opt-in to use. So you're getting rid of the red tape that you'd normally have if you were setting up a push notification, because you do need to have a push token to send that to the user. But in-app messages are for anyone who is in your app with a session. The good thing about in-app messages as well is you also have more flexibility for the design and branding elements, and you can use more of that space since you're not limited to the front screen of the phone. You have the entire screen space within your app to play with, so there's lots of room for creativity and adding additional elements that you couldn't in a standard push notification. You also don't need to use any code or app store approvals to change or launch new messaging. So if you want to have one in-app for Halloween, one in-app for Thanksgiving, and one for the holiday season, you can set those all up without having to change or launch anything. So you can really swap in and out the different design elements and in-app messages that you choose. We do want to caveat of all of our different channels of communication. In-app messaging is the only one that is mobile only. Great, so we're going to move into best practices now. One best practice we recommend is customizing those prompt permissions. So two different reasons you might be asking for prompt permissions. One would be location asks, if you want to have someone share their location while they're in the app, or to track their app location to save that information for later, or to actually ask for push prompt permissions. So to kind of ask for a push token to send push notifications as well. So in-app messaging can be used to pre-prompt those hard prompts from iOS, those like gray ones that drop down that have, just the we want to send you notifications. There's not a lot of flexibility or creativity there, but you can use in-app to make your own pre-prompts and soft prompts. And what this allows you to do is you can inform users of the value of subscribing to those notifications. You get to explain your value prop or why someone would want to opt in for your notifications. It's a good chance to customize it so it's not just asking for notifications, but saying what you'll get for them. So if you were a news or media team, you'd probably want to say, latest breaking news. If you're an e-commerce team, you don't want to do like special deals, promotions, like seasonal deals. And from there, you can also incorporate your company's branding. So having your logo, your colors, and your wording on the prompt, so it doesn't feel like it's just coming from iOS, but they know that it's from your site. This ask is from your company, and explaining exactly what they'll get, in your terms with your design and your custom copy and tone. You can also customize the timing of the prompt. Very often when you're opening an app for the first time and they're asking for prompt permissions, it's pretty immediate. And it can be helpful to wait until someone has maybe finished sign in or just gotten acquainted with the app for a few seconds. So you can either have the timing when something happens or a second delay. Great. You can also use surveys through our in-app messaging. So what you can do is set up an in-app message to have, ask a question and have different buttons for the various responses. And we can give you real-time feedback and insights as to how customers are feeling about the question posed. In this example, how satisfied were you with your delivery? You can track with our extensive analytics what the results were. So we, for every single button, will have individual analytics of, how many people clicked that button and how that button performed over time, so that you really have a good idea of how people are feeling in reaction to your question. You can also avoid sending users outside of the app or redirecting them. We can capture and house all these analytics for this, question you're asking them in-app in-house. So it makes for a cleaner experience. They can quickly answer that question and then go about their app experience without having to leave or come back. You can also tag users based on their selections. So you can say, like, are you enjoying the app so far? Yes, no. You can tag a user with no code needed for yes, and maybe you can prompt them on their next session, asking them to rate the app, taking them to the app store. And if they said no, you could potentially bring them to a feedback form, ask them, what's wrong or why they had a bad experience. If you had prompted someone who had said they were having a bad experience to rate the app, that could really hurt your app store rating. So things like that can be kind of safeties and checks to understand your users and their experience in real time. Communicate more with Carousel. So Carousel is a pretty unique feature to OneSignal that allows you to have up to 10 screens of customizable content for a user to swipe through. We often see this used as an educational tool for onboarding, feature announcements, recommendations, because you kind of have more than one screen to tell a story or to kind of explain a certain feature, change, anything like that in the app. And same as we have for our surveys, we also have impression and click analytics by every individual card, so you'll understand which ones resonate with your audience most. A feature like this would usually require some custom code or engineering work, but you have all these cards out of the box, and no need for any work to make that slide functionality or to make any of that happen. In-app triggers. So in-app triggers allow, it's essentially coding a certain type of event that it's happening during the session for us to then prompt an in-app message. So one example might be if you want a pop-up to happen when someone adds something to cart, if you want a pop-up to happen when someone hits a certain level in a game, we are able to trigger message specific to the behavior within the app session, as long as you're using our in-app trigger coding. You can reward people for reaching certain milestones within the app or provide them with timely information. This is also a great way to generate targeted revenue opportunities. You can really pick those key interactions that are happening in the app. And if you want to give additional information or context or offers, promotions, anything like that, we can do that so that it's very immediate, and you don't have to do any waiting before they're served that specific messaging. Be creative and fun. One of my favorite things about in-app messaging is it gives you a lot of space to be creative. We have out of the box a lot of different ways that you can customize. We have multiple fonts to choose from. You can do custom colors, opacity. You can do shadows. You can do boxes from within the buttons, and anything that kind of matches your company's design or enhances it to make a really fun experience. I will say it's like one of the most flexible messaging channels that we have. You can also use rich media. You can use any images you want. We do support GIFs as well. If you want something that's, has a little bit of motion to it, that can be really fun. But you can really have compelling messages and get a little bit creative, which is nice. You can also deep link them to an area in the app that you'd like for them to discover. So in the app, we have ways, it's a good way to do some feature discovery. You can deep link them anywhere, any specific page or area that you want. That way, you can make sure that people who are really active in the app and having sessions are exploring all of your great features. Utilizing shortcuts. So these are some best practices very specific to the OneSignal setup, but you can actually, all of the building pieces that we have for our in-app messages, whether they're a text block or an image block or a button block, all of them can be duplicated, and the work that you've created into setting up one, if you duplicate it, it will be carried over into the next one. So once you have, my advice is to always set up one button to your exact specificity in terms of color, font, copy, roundness, other things that you can customize, then hit duplicate. And from there, you can have that exact same button and just change, if you have a yes and a no button, you can just change the text and all the work has already been done for you. And a similar thing applies to carousel. For carousel, once you set up the first carousel screen, you can hit add card and it'll copy everything from the original. So a good way to save time, especially if you need to have, maybe like 4 different screens and they all have similar fonts and colors, etc. We also have 5 preset message templates that come out of the box in every OneSignal account. You'll see an image of them here on the right-hand side. There's a welcome message, a new feature announcement, app store rating, push permission prompt, and a 10% off promotion. So that's a good place to get started if you're looking for ideas, if you want to either duplicate or edit those to your company's specifics and then set them live from there. It's a good place just to kind of get started if you've never set up an in-app message before to get comfortable with it. Another piece of advice, just like a shortcut to save you some time, you can save drafts of your in-app message. So you can just save that reusable design and you can keep duplicating it. Or if you want to set up an in-app message but are still waiting on a piece of copy or a piece of design, you can set up everything and just save it as a draft so it's waiting on that last thing before launching it live. So you can save that content. I've seen some food delivery apps who have like reusable design of when they have a partnership with a specific restaurant, they have like a template set up that they just change the image of and the text of, but all the other specs are the same. So something like that can be a big time saver if you're really using this feature. Great. And now I'd like to sort of take a step back and talk about some of the value that in-app messaging specifically can bring to the table. Whoops, sorry about that. First, I think it's important to talk about optimizing the onboarding experience and purchasing for users. So the cost of acquiring a mobile user and a download, it's really expensive. So the average for iOS is $3.60. For Android, it's $1.22. And the cost of a purchasing user can range between $50 and $87. And with this sort of high stakes per user setup, it's important to make sure that you're getting the most value out of them if possible. Positively influencing any of these behaviors are going to increase the LTV and ensure you're getting better value for that money that you're spending for those mobile downloads. And this affects in-app messaging because in-app messaging is a really compelling way to increase user-based retention and to help guide people towards certain key behaviors, such as a purchase or maybe a second-time purchase, which will make those lifetime values increase and the CAC sort of decrease, or to make it more appealing to have paid that much to have a new user in your app. So in-app messages have been shown to improve app retention by 27%, which is already a big cost savings if you're thinking about the usual drop off of mobile users, which are so expensive to acquire in the first place. The average mobile app loses about 77% of its daily active users within the first 3 days after install, and 90% within 30 days. Within 90 days, it's around 95%. So anything to move the needle on that, sort of end of funnel that you're losing so many of those valuable users can be really helpful. And I think this is another place where in-app messaging kicks in because it allows you to tap into an audience that other channels might not allow you to. There will be some people who are having in-app sessions that you don't have a valid push token for, and you might not have collected any other information for an additional channel, like if you're using an SMS or email channel. And in-app messaging is a way to reach out to those users that you don't have any other information to. So it's helping activate a new audience, as well as increase the retention of some of those expensive mobile users that you've already gotten to download the app and start a session. It can really help with keeping them and helping them prove out value quickly. Another thing I wanted to mention is, in-app message audiences are people who are using the app. They are having an active session. So there is already a preset like interest and understanding of the brand. So I want to bring up the Pareto principle here. The idea is that 20% of your inputs affect 80% of the outputs in business. So keeping those high value customers happy, keeping their experience customized and special and delighting them and ensuring that they understand the different paths to value within your app are really going to pay the dividends, making sure that that group specifically has been, you're putting in the right inputs to ensure they have success. Great. I wanted to show a quick case study that we had here with the National Rugby League. They adopted our in-app messaging feature. We can link to this. This is actually active on our site. And they were able to quickly adopt in-app messaging and show that extra level of engagement needed to kind of improve the mobile experience and understand more information to get people to know more about, certain events and finals and important information like that. So highly recommend checking that out if you're curious about in-app messaging and want to see a company that adopted it from the beginning. All right. We are going to move into the Q&A now. Give me 1 second while I pull up questions. Okay, we have a question here. Is it possible to send messages only to a specific ID or segment? Yes. So when you go into the in-app messaging page, similar to when you're setting up a push notification, the first field that you're going to see is that audience field. So you can either select from your list of existing segments, or if you want to make a new segment in real time, you can go to the end of that list and hit create segment to create one for that in-app message as well. Great question, though. Okay. Oh, okay. So Bruno asked a question about formatting. So at the time, he wasn't able to change the font type to bold, italicized, and things like that. And so they were placing an image, which is a great workaround if there's ever a limitation in the text. Putting the text into an image is another great way to do that. But it seems like I see a follow-up message from Bruno. We actually just released bold, italicized, underlined. Those features actually came out a couple weeks ago, as well as about 20 different font types. So that should be have a little more flexibility now. So I'm glad to see that. Okay, we have another question about outcomes and setting up parameters to track in-app message performance. Okay. A great question. So we have a few different options here. One thing to know is that when you're setting up the pieces, like the different building blocks of an in-app message, whether that's the buttons, the text, the image, all of the different engagement behaviors, like who is clicking on that, is tracked automatically. So if you automatically want to know who's clicking on the different pieces, that will show up in the analytics. We do have a couple options that take things to the next level, though. One of which is the ability to tag a user based on something that they've done in the app. So you can also make it so that if someone clicks one button or another button, there's a way to no code data tag. So sort of the example that I gave about asking someone if they're enjoying the app, yes, no, you can tag that user so that yes, no user, you could make a push notification campaign for, you could make another in-app message for to guide them. So you can tag them with a piece of information that you use for further segmentation. So your happy users, you ask them to review, your happy users, you ask them to refer someone, your unhappy users, you ask them for a way to give you that feedback needed to understand what went wrong with their app experience. There is also a feature called outcomes. So outcomes are our version of like conversion tracking. So two outcomes that you're going to get out of the box are clicks and sessions. You've seen that probably on the main dashboard page, but you can also code custom outcomes to us. So I always tell e-commerce teams purchases in number and purchases in value are things that we can track. So that's a really great use case for sending us an outcome. It just requires we have a code snippet that it lives in our documentation that you can find to set those up. So the other thing you can do is connect those outcomes to a certain behavior within an in-app message. So if someone is clicking on a button, you can connect it to an outcome as well. So you can, it's under the click action for that button, you can select a certain outcome. So if that's like, you know, maybe you have someone, you want to track on the main dashboard overview people's category interest for the news. So if you had an in-app message with, you know, like politics interest, business interest, you can make it so that those connect to another outcome that's indicating interest in those things. Let me know if that answer made sense. And if not, you can ask further questions here and I'll give a little more clarity. How is the pricing of in-app messages calculated? That's a great question. I am not a sales rep, but I will say we have sort of a general pricing that's, I believe it's $3 per 1,000 impressions. We can take this offline. One thing I will say is we do have, you know, you can reach out to the red support icon you see in the bottom right hand side of your screen, and we can help connect you to your sales rep. There are also various pricing pages within our website where you can ask. That's kind of a general outline of typically what the cost is. There are certain, you know, exceptions and changes, but that gives you kind of a general idea. And the reason we charge for in-app separately is sort of what I was saying about the audiences being different. We can't always determine how many in-app messages we're sending based on how many push subscribers you have. We have a very subscriber first paying model, but in-app messaging, you can reach out to different groups. So it's important to kind of pay for those individually on their own because the numbers can be different. Okay, great. Oh, we have one more question. Okay, great. We have a question about the Mixpanel integration and how that works with in-app messaging. So the question was, is it possible to pass in a specific data point along with a Mixpanel cohort? So part yes, part no. I'll kind of go into it as quickly as I can. But with Mixpanel, you can sync over audiences to us. So you create an audience within Mixpanel. You can sync it to us. You can make a dynamic sync so it updates every 15 minutes. But that is essentially bringing that cohort directly into the OneSignal segment area. So like it's making a cohort into a segment. The way that we personalize messages, and by personalize, I mean inject values such as someone's first name, such as the level of the game that they were in, that lives within OneSignal data tags. So you would need to have a OneSignal data tag with that information, and then we can inject that value into in-app messaging. But unfortunately, you know, Mixpanel is sending us the group we need directly to the segments that we're using to target for messages. So if you wanted to send in a Mixpanel cohort to be the like group that would receive an in-app message, we can do that. But personalizing individual code, so the example you gave is inserting the value of a place someone's traveling, like not too late to book your trip for Chicago, like based on like an abandoned cart for the last flight that they were trying to book, which in this case would be Chicago. That would need to be a data tag that's passed to OneSignal. We can walk you through, it's definitely possible, but unfortunately there's one more step needed. It's not just the way that Mixpanel and OneSignal communicates. And I'll let you know if there are any corrections to that, but I'm pretty positive that's the case. Okay. Oh, we have a follow-up question about pricing of in-app messaging. So I mentioned we charge by impressions and wanted to give a clarification based on a question received. They asked if impression was a view or a click. Impressions are a view, so people who are viewing the message. Okay, great. Well, it looks like we got through all the questions. But that being said, it is always an open conversation. So if you are in OneSignal and you have further questions for us, there's always support at onesignal.com. There's always the red icon in the corner of your dashboard screen. So you can reach out and ask us follow-up questions at any time. Thank you.